everyone, this is Nina with Walla Stamping, and thank you for joining me today. This is the project that I'd like to share with you. I was sitting around this morning, and I broke the bow there. I was sitting around this morning racking my brain for something to make, because I just had that little crafty bone in me wanting to get up and get busy. So this is what I came up with, and this is what I'm going to share with you. And I used several different cardstocks and a designer series paper in this card, and I'll tell you what all those are in a moment. But I popped up the gifts off the card to try to give them more of a three-dimensional look. And I used the stitched shapes framelits to cut out my sentiment with, and then I backed it with some Dazzling Diamonds glimmer paper. So let me set this aside, and I'm going to show you everything that you'll need to create this card. First of all, you'll need a piece of Very Vanilla that is cut to 10 by 6 and scored at 5. And you're going to need an additional piece for your sentiment, and that's about 3.5 by 3.5. as well as another piece that's 3.5 by 3.5 of the Dazzling Diamonds glimmer paper. Then for the red border that you see there, I am using, what is this called? Presents and Pinecones designer series paper. This piece is cut to 5 3/4 by 4 3/4. Then I have a piece of Bermuda Bay cardstock. This is cut to 5.5 by 4.5. Have a piece of Old Olive, which will create our Christmas tree. This is cut to 5 by 2.5. Then I have some smaller pieces, and this is Cherry Cobbler cut to 2 by 2. A piece of Island Indigo. Sugar is playing with her toy, so you're going to hear squeaking. A piece of Island Indigo, and this is cut to 2 by 1 1/4, and a piece of, I forgot, Garden Green, and this is cut to 1 by 1 1/4 by 1.5. So that's a lot of that. And then you're just going to need a piece of scrap silver glimmer paper, and this one is not big enough, but I have used all of mine, and this is the only little piece of scrap that I had. So you'll need a piece probably more like the size of this one, about 3 by 3, 3.5 by 3.5, and you're going to be cutting out the bows and then the little strips that are going to go down the package on there. So for the stamping, I've used the tin of tags, and the one that I used is the, where did it go? Here it is, the Warmest Wishes and Mistletoe Kisses. So I used that to stamp my sentiment. Then to cut it out, I used the stitched shapes framelits, and the one that I used for the actual sentiment is the next to largest, which is this one, to cut that out. And then for the glimmer paper that goes behind it, I used this one here, which is the next to the largest in the Layering Circles framelits. Then for the bow, I used the Pretty Pine Thinlits, and I just used the small bow out of that. I'm also going to be using some Bermuda Bay to stamp the sentiment with, and a block C to mount that on. You'll need some dimensionals and some rhinestones, as well as some tape adhesives. All right, so let me move all of this stuff out of the way so we can get started with this card. So we'll start with our card base first and start layering everything. So I'm just going to use on this some snail adhesive. Just put a few strips on the back of that and get that centered up. Then, and let me show you something. I'm dropping pieces and parts there. On this one, I actually stamped some snowflakes on it, but then after I got it made and looked at it, I felt like it was a little bit too busy with everything else that's going on the card. So on this one, I'm not going to do that stamping. Then on this piece, which is the Bermuda Bay, I'm going to put some snail adhesive on the back of this as well and center it up in that designer series paper like that. And then the next thing I'm going to show you how to do is cut out your Christmas tree. Now that is done with this old olive piece of cardstock, and this was 5 by 2.5. So what you're going to need for this is your Stampin' trimmer, and I'm going to move the blade out of the way for a moment. So this is 2.5 inches wide. Half of that is 1 1/4. So I'm going to line my left side of my cardstock up on a 1 1/4 inch, and I'm going to slide the score blade down and just run it over the tip top of that, and you're not going to be able to see that probably, but there's just a little mark right there that I made so I know where the center is. So then what I'm going to do is that little mark that I made, I'm going to line it up inside the center of my cutting guide here, and I'm going to line the other corner up. Let me scoot this up a little bit so you can see it better. Line the other corner up down here in the cutting track. Then you'll want to put your blade into the center of your paper, because if you try to come up from the corner here, it will tear your paper, and I have found that it works better if you start with your blade in the middle and go up and then come back down. Then you'll turn your paper to the right, and that corner that you just cut off the top, you'll line up, and this bottom left corner you'll line up in that cutting track and do the same thing again. Put your blade about center way of your paper and cut, and that will give you your triangle for your tree. I've already got the squares cut out for the packages, but y'all know how to cut rectangles and squares using the trimmer. So that's all we'll need the trimmer for. And we're not going to need our scoring tool today. So what I'll do next then is I'll go ahead and get this embossed. And I did forget to tell you, you're going to need some Versamark. And I did mention the Block C, your embossing buddy, as well. And I have some embossing powders here. I've got copper and silver. So let's set all this out of the way for just a moment, and I'm going to grab a piece of scrap paper to do this stamping on. And so what I did was I took this little string of stars stamp here, and I also used the little light bulb, and that's what I stamped on top of my Christmas tree. I used the copper to do the string of stars, and I used the silver to do the little light bulbs. So let's go ahead and rub this down with our embossing buddy, and this just keeps your the oils from your fingers getting on the paper will make the embossing powder stick places you don't necessarily want it to, and that embossing buddy prevents that from happening. So we're just going to use the string of stars and just come in here and start stamping, and I just went back and forth crisscrossing over one another just like this, and I just went all the way down the tree. And I just kind of made sure that I crisscrossed it somewhat on the edge and went all the way down the tree till I got it all done. And I think I'm going to do one more right there. And so for this, use the copper embossing powder. Shake off the excess and then give it a little tap to remove any that didn't come off. Then we're going to grab the heat tool and we'll go ahead and get this heat embossed. That's done. Isn't that so pretty? I love that copper embossing powder so much. Okay, so I have my little light on the opposite side of my block. So let's get the Versamark back out and we'll load that up with some Versamark, and I'm just going to go down through here and just randomly stamp this little light bulb just back and forth all through here. Sometimes it will run over the top of the stars, and sometimes it won't, and that's okay. If it does run over the stars, it won't hurt anything. Okay, so got that done. Now we'll use the silver embossing powder this time. Get that sprinkled on there. Take off the excess. Now I've noticed that I did get a couple smudges down here, so I'm just going to take a paintbrush and just brush that away. Okay, so that's all you have to do if you see any places where embossing powder got that you do not want it to be. So let's heat emboss the silver now. Okay, so there is your embossing done. Now I couldn't stop there because I love anything that is blingy and sparkly and shiny. So I got a few rhinestones. Now these, if you'll notice, there are extra small, small, medium, and large, or small, medium, large, and extra large, however you want to look at it. So I'm using the next to the smallest size rhinestones. And I'm just picking some of those up and just randomly placing them on the tree. And I probably used somewhere between 5 and 7. Okay, maybe one more right there. All right, so our tree is all blinged out, and I love it. So what we'll do now is we'll go ahead, and I'm just going to use some glue dots for this. You could probably use some snail or fast fuse, but well, I don't see my glue dots, so I think I will use my snail because I don't know where I've put it. I've been doing a lot of crafting this morning, and I have laid it down somewhere and I don't know where. So you're going to put the Christmas tree over here, kind of to the left side edge, but not all the way down to the bottom of that paper there, the blue paper. Okay, then let's get our gift packages decorated. So what you'll do here is I have some strips of the silver glimmer paper, and I just cut them out with my scissors. And I didn't worry about how long they were or how wide they were. I just trimmed them. Actually, there's one missing, so I'll just cut another one. So that's all I did. I just kind of made them different sizes and didn't worry about if they were perfect or whatever, because I kind of wanted it to have a little bit of a whimsical look to it. Then just put a little bit of multi-purpose glue on the back, and I lined it up at the top of the box and just let it hang over at the bottom, and then I'll go in with my scissors and trim the extra off. It doesn't take very much glue. I've got dropsy today for whatever reason. I can't seem to hang on to anything. Okay. Now, okay, so I got those things cut out. There's my 3 bows. And I really need to know what in the world I did with my glue dots. I think I just found them. If you could see my workspace, you would probably be appalled. I have got stuff everywhere. There's not an inch of my workspace except for down here in this corner that isn't covered with paper or glue or something. Alright, so let's grab a glue dot, and I'm going to stick it right there on the top of that glimmer paper, and then stick my bow on top of the glue dot, and repeat that with the other 2. And when I stick the bow down, I try to push down pretty good, put some pressure on it, because this glimmer paper is glitter, and you have to really add some pressure to it to get that glue dot to sink into that glitter and hang on. I'm just going to flip these over, just trim off the extra piece. I did it this way so that I didn't have to worry about being so precise with my cutting of these strips. Because sometimes you think you've got your measurement down and then you end up sticking it on your box and it's either going to be just a tad bit too long or a tad bit too short. So this way you don't have to worry about it. Okay, so let me go ahead and get this piece of Very Vanilla, and we will stamp our sentiment on there. And I am using, again, I think I said in the beginning, Warm Wishes and Mistletoe Kisses, and I'm going to be using the Bermuda Bay ink to stamp that. You can tell I have been inking this morning. I've got blue ink all over my fingers. Just stamp that somewhere somewhat in the middle. Then once you've got that stamped, you will take your next to largest round stitch shapes framelits, go to your big shot, get your sentiment centered up within that framelit and cut it out. So I've already got that one done. So let me grab it here. And then we're just going to use some fast fuse to adhere these two together, and I'm going to put quite a bit on the back of this because I am sticking it to glitter. And just a wee little bit of those scallops are going to show. Give it a good press to make sure it stays stuck down. Now I'm going to use some dimensionals to pop that up off the top of the card, and I'm just going to put 3 on here. Peel the backing off of those. Then adhere that right up here in the top right corner. And then I'm using quite a few dimensionals with my packaging as well because I want them to stick up off the top of that package. Now I will say this, if you plan on putting this in the mail, you're not going to want to use as many dimensionals on the back of the packages probably as I'm using because it is pretty thick. This one right here, I actually have 3 on the back of it. So you might want to cut back and just put 1 layer on the back of each of your packages if you're going to be putting it in the mail. So let me get these on here, and I did this just because I really wanted a more 3-dimensional look to this. So that is the reason that I'm using so many dimensionals on the back, is to make it stand up quite a bit off the top of off the top of the card here. Now on the bottom, I'm just going to use 1. So I have 3 at the top, 1 at the bottom. And this card is, or this package rather, is going to go just underneath the sentiment right there. Then the next one we'll put down will be this blue one, and I'm going to put 2 layers on the back of this one. Just like that. Get those backings peeled off. I've got them everywhere. And then this one is going to go pretty much even with the tree, but then on top of the red one. Stick that down. Let me get some of that out of the way. And then the last one is going to be our green one, and I'm just going to use 1 layer of dimensionals on the back of this one. And so then this one will slide up a little bit above the bottom of this one and overlap it just slightly. Now, this is our card all done. I did not put anything on the inside of mine. You, of course, could stamp a sentiment inside. I just decided to leave it blank so that I could write whatever I wanted to in there. So I'm going to bring this other one back in that I did at first with the snowflake stamps in the background, and you can kind of decide which one you like the best. I like them both, but like I said, with all the glitter and the shiny things that I've got going on, I felt like the snowflakes could maybe be just a little bit over the top. So this is the Warmest Wishes and Mistletoe Kisses Christmas card. I hope you enjoyed the video today, and I would love it if you would give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. And there's a link below this video, and if you click on that, it'll take you to my blog, and I will have there all of the instructions and the measurements and a picture of these cards so that you can recreate this. If you need any of the items to create this card, you can also go to my online store and purchase them there as well. So I hope you guys have a great day, and I will talk to you soon.